Chapter 644. Let's head back. Hyo-sanya turned around without saying another word. He didn't even wait for the disciple's response. Coldness emanated from his very walk. It wasn't behavior befitting a representative, especially when Hyo-gong hadn't even regained consciousness. Still, none of Wudang's disciples dared to point out his error. Mu-jin sighed softly as he watched Hyo-sanya walk away into the distance. Bring the elder. We will return to Wudang at once. Yes. He then looked at the sages, still in shock, and opened his mouth to speak. Do not forget what the elder of Mount Hua said a moment ago. The real winner is the one who gains more from this fight. The outcome of this spar may show a clear defeat for us, but if we truly learn something from it, we have nothing to be ashamed of. Yes. It's just. Mu-jin closed his eyes. I just feel like we've missed out on too much. It wasn't us who built up the reputation of being the best swordsman sect in the world, we merely assumed it was our full strength. All the disciples of Wudang nodded at those words. They understood Mu-jin's message. We start again. From scratch. The disciples of the other sects are trying much harder than us, so we cannot afford to hold back and feel embarrassed before them. We will keep that in mind. Well, try harder. Right. We will. Mu-jin nodded slightly. As if his words offered them comfort, everyone began to find a task and moved out. However, Mu-jin's heart grew heavy with all this. The disciples of Wudang learned lessons from this spar. But would the sect leader and the other elders readily accept the results? It's unlikely. They were the ones striving for a future envisioned, while the elders and sect leader believed the present was all that mattered. When he changed their positions and thought about it, he didn't think he would want to be considered as a sect leader who was humiliated in front of the people by a ruining sect and gave up the title of the world's best sword sect and best swordsman to another. Maybe this spar will change a lot more than I had imagined. There was a high chance that the change would be in the direction that Mu-jin didn't want, but he had no strength to stop this. All he could do was just hope that the elders and sect leader wouldn't decide something which was the worst option. Wait a minute. After speaking to the disciples, Mu-jin began to walk towards Mount Hua like he had something planned. This bastard. You are unbelievable. Oh my, you won over Wudang elder. Just how far ahead can you go, you idiot? Chang Yang, who thought of that name, scratched his head in silence and turned. The goal of being a strong person was achieved for now. I need to head back now. This was to be done before Hyunjong started shedding tears in loneliness. Well, I am sure he will like it since I am bringing a nice present. A pleasant smile appeared on Chang Yang's lips as he ran back to Mount Hua's disciples. Chapter 645. What? Song Tae-ak, whose eyes were opened as huge as lanterns, screamed without realizing it. He won. Yes. Who? Mount Hua over Wudang. What? There was no problem with the ears. There was no way one could not hear when the same thing was being said again and again. However, the result was so strange that they couldn't help but ask. Mount Hua defeated Wudang. Right. Tell me a little more. Just how did this happen? At Song Tae-ak's urging, the disciple held out the paper in his hands as if there was no need to say anything more. As he quickly snatched it and read, he looked shocked. Elder and elder of Wudang was defeated. That by Mount Hua's divine dragon. No matter how many times he rubbed his eyes and read it again, the contents of the paper didn't change even in the slightest. There is no mistake in this content, right? Did you ever see information wrongly brought in? True. I guess so. For merchants, information was life. Moreover, if it was his own merchants, there was nothing to change the contents in. They would have written down what they saw with their eyes. No, they say that in life, it is bound to happen that a wolf chases away a tiger. It was difficult to say that Mount Hua beating Wudang was like a wolf taking down a tiger. Wasn't this like a rabbit hitting a tiger's chin and pulling out the front teeth with its paws? Oh God. If something so absurd had actually happened, the cause was pretty clear. The tiger wasn't a tiger, nor was the rabbit a rabbit. Since there was no way Wudang was a tiger, it meant that Mount Hua was a lot stronger than they thought. Oh, my. Song Tae-ak was scared as he pulled on his hair. Only then did he realize the mistake he had made. If he had known that Mount Hua would defeat Wudang like this, he wouldn't have been so passive. He would have gone to the place where the spar was happening and even waved flowers. Damn it, I made a mistake. He kept pounding on his head with his large hand and looked back at his subordinate with red eyes. Well, then, where are the Mount Hua people now? They are probably back at the Merchant Union House by now. The news came as soon as the warrior was announced as the winner. What? They're heading back now. Why, yes. They are. Already. He looked flustered. Song Tae-ak was a man who ran a merchant union. If he was stupid enough to not do anything now, then he wouldn't be able to raise that much money. What are you doing? Prepare the victory banquet right away. And alcohol, too. Prepare to overwhelm them with alcohol and food. Yes, I understand. Wonderful. Mobilize everything that can be brought and present the best meal they can have. We have to show them that Song Tae-ak and his merchant union are genuinely rejoicing at Mount Hua's victory. Yes. Song Tae-ak took a deep breath as he watched his subordinates running around. Ads by Pub Future. What happens now? The reason he abandoned Wudang and tried to side with Mount Hua wasn't because he expected Mount Hua to defeat Wudang right away. But it was more about investing in the future. This was done at the calculation that Mount Hua would have amazing growth when compared with Wudang. But this was what happened. Such a huge success. If Mount Hua's skills and strength were more than what he expected, he might be able to get back several times the money he invested. For some reason, I like this dreaming spot. This isn't the time for me to be like this. Instead of sitting back and leaving the matter to his subordinates, he had to step forward and ensure the preparations for the banquet were all set. Now that Mount Hua have finished their work, they would start to leave for Shaanxi. Before that, Song Tae-ak and his merchant union had to make their mark. Where do I start? For now. It was then. Merchant leader. Ah. What's happening? Mount-hua-sect is returning. Startled, Song Tae-ak jumped up from his spot. Why so fast? Nothing is even set in motion. Oh my. He quickly ran towards the gate. Open the gates. We must ring the bell of victory to welcome our returning warriors. Open the gates wide. Yes. Perhaps understanding the importance of the matter, the merchantman opened the gates wide. Song Tae-ak ran out in one go and took a deep breath. Are they coming from that side? Seems like it. Yuke. Please calm down now. I know. But it's not like I can control that. Song Tae-ak responded, looking annoyed. Do these people understand how big this is? What did it mean for Mount Hua to win over Wudang, especially in Wuhan and not some other region? This was information that could change the situation in Kango. So, how could he not be nervous? Merchant leader. I know. That's not it. There. The Mount Hua people are approaching. As soon as those words were said, Song Tae-ak tilted his head in that direction. A group of people could be seen approaching from afar. Gulp. Gulping down his anxiousness, he looked at those who were approaching. Naturally, they were all disciples of Mount Hua. But something seems changed. They were clearly the disciples of Mount Hua he knew and had met. He even saw them off when they were leaving this morning. He couldn't forget it then. But the disciples of Mount Hua, who were walking back to him, gave him a subtly different feeling from what he saw in the morning. Ads by Pub Future. How should he explain this? They were clearly the same people on the outside, but they seemed to hold a presence and importance that didn't exist before. Do I feel that way because I heard the news of them defeating Wudang? But no matter how much he looked, that didn't seem to be the case. A merchant was one who saw the flow of money, but before that, he must know how to see people. Therefore, no matter what the others did or who they were, he would have to maintain an objective gaze. Surely they have changed. If one thought about it, it wasn't something that can be understood. Warriors grew through training, but they also grew based on what they have achieved. The fact that they won this spar against Wudang must have led him to gain some confidence, too. If those with good enough skills gained confidence, then it was definite that the air around them would change in an instant. Even the disciples of Mount Hua walking in line didn't feel the same as before. Song Tae-ak felt a chill run down his spine, making him clench his fist. He wasn't a warrior, but it was surely amazing to think that he was watching people who were walking down just one path, all their lives to grow, and now they were taking a major step toward their goal. Who wouldn't feel thrilled? He tried to hold his body from trembling and waited for the Mount Hua disciples to get close, and then shouted. I congratulate you on your win. Heroes of Mount Hua. Then, when Hyun Sang, who was in the lead, smiled and spoke. I feel like my joy is doubled because the merchant leader personally chose to welcome us like this. There is no way I wouldn't have come out to congratulate you. When again will I be able to find such an auspicious time? And you won over Wudang. Ha ha ha. Thank you. My heart is still raging. I really congratulate you. Hyun Sang nodded gently. Deep down, Song Tae-ak thought that choosing Mount Hua was a better decision than sticking with Wudang. But then came a familiar, nasty voice. For someone who has been around the whole time, the congratulations are a bit too much. He glanced to the side, and there was Chung Myung, leaning on one leg and tilting his head, his eyes looking bored. When? Everyone saw the person who looked like he wanted to join Mount Hua right then and there, only to escape as soon as Wudang made their way here. And now what? Congratulations. Ha ha ha. Song Tae-ak began to sweat on his forehead. Did you know this would happen? It was true that he was a little scared. He had no idea that Wudang, which he expected would be courteous until Mount Hua left, would rush in that quickly. What? You changed your mind now that we won? W would I do that, Taoist? From the start, I was on the side of Mount Hua. Words don't become true just because you speak them. Chung Myung glanced at him with a look of dissatisfaction. Song Tae-ak literally felt like he was dying. Taoist. It was Hyun Young who moved in to save Song Tae-ak. Chung Myung. Do not be too harsh now. Doesn't the leader have his own situations to handle? TSK. Chung Myung grumbled and pouted, but he couldn't go against what Hyun Young said. Hyun Young smiled, looking at Song Tae-ak. Do not think too much into it, I understand everything. Thank you, Elder. Adds by Pub Future. However. Hyun Young stroked his beard and smiled. Transactions are things that are normally based on trust, mutual trust. Isn't it true that the truth varies depending on the situation? True. This is the first time that Mount Hua is trying to build ties with another merchant union, so there is a chance that both sides will make equal mistakes. Wouldn't we just work together to avoid making mistakes in the future? I will make sure to keep that in mind. Song Tae-ak answered quickly and gulped. Chung Myung's anger was direct, but Hyun Young had a way of speaking with swords in his mouth. This was no different from a warning that said he wouldn't be silent the next time if Song Tae-ak chose to be ambiguous. Therefore, Song Tae-ak also had to show his will to stand on one side alone. Hurry up and come inside now. The victory banquet is being held up. It will be prepared properly for us to be celebrated. Ha ha. Until then. What sad words do you want to say now? Our Golden Mountain merchant and Mount Hua are none other than one, so of course, I will have to congratulate you. Now, come on inside and eat. As Song Tae-ak made a fuss, Hyun Young pretended like he couldn't refuse any longer and walked away. Then, the other disciples of Mount Hua followed him and entered the merchant place, but had novel than it had. When all of the Mount Hua disciples stepped in, Song Tae-ak, who was left behind, wiped the sweat off his forehead and then exhaled a long sigh. I would have been in huge trouble if I wasn't careful. If Wudang had taken the lead, then both Mount Hua and he would have been pushed to a point of no return. His perseverance till the end was what saved him this time. But TSSSK. There seemed to be one person in the world who would never forget their resentment and grudge. The others had all walked in, but this one little devil stayed back to look at him. Song Tae-ak wiped the cold sweat. Taoist. That I am. You. Yes. Chung Myung opened his mouth and pointed to Song Tae-ak, directing him inside. Wudang's elder was defeated by this boy. And it wasn't as if Song Tae-ak hadn't committed any wrongs either. Since the elder has said so, I will let this pass for now. Yes. When the war breaks out, the one walking the tightrope will be the first to take the hit. Do you understand? I understand. I do. TSK. Chung Myung clicked his tongue. Let's talk again after seeing how well you treat us all. Do not worry. I have taken care of everything. How? To what extent? You understand. Chung Myung glared at him until the end and then walked in. The aide, who had observed everything from the side until the end, approached Song Tae-ak. What do we do? Song Tae-ak just looked up at the sky with a look of despair, then took something out of his sleeve and handed it to the man. Open the safe. That all of it? Use it for the banquet, for now. Yes. Take the rest of the money to that guy's room. Tears formed in the corners of his eyes as he mourned the loss of his well-saved money. Chapter 646. It was often said that the eyes were the doors to the heart. This was because the eyes were where a person's emotions were most clearly revealed. Therefore, whenever Hyo-sanya dealt with someone, he made it a point to look directly into their eyes. However, at this moment, he didn't dare to meet the gaze of the person in front of him. Tack. The other person's fingernails lightly tapped the table. Tack. Tack. The sound, steady at first, began to accelerate slightly. And Hyo-sanya's heart started to beat a bit faster. Ugh. So you lost. The voice, finally reaching his ears like daggers, made him hold his breath as if he had been stabbed. The cold voice continued. Hyo-sanya. Yes, sect leader. Hyo-sanya took a deep breath, raised his head, and then held his breath again. Venerable Hyo-do. This was because an expression he had never seen on this man-the sect leader of Wudang, and his Sahum was being shown on his face. Although it had been many years since they had worked together in Wudang, Hyo-sanya couldn't recall the last time he had seen such a cold expression on this man's face. With that cold look, Venerable Hyo-do spoke slowly. So you lost. The sharp eyes did not leave Hyo-sanya, who lowered his head once again. I apologize, sect leader. I am truly embarrassed. This isn't something you apologize for, Hyo-sanya. His cold voice filled the room. Speak now. Why did you lose? Hyo-sanya could only gulp. On the way back, he had pondered what he would report to the sect leader about what had happened. But in the end, he could only come to one conclusion. Mount Hua. After mulling it over a couple more times, not wanting to admit it, he finally said it. Mount Hua was much stronger than we expected. Venerable Hyo-do didn't show any particular reaction. He just looked at Hyo-sanya quietly as if that wasn't a good enough answer. The skills of the 5 swords of Mount Hua are already surpassing those of any normal first-class disciples of sects. Although the second and third-class disciples, excluding him, weren't as good, they were a match for the second-class disciples of ours. It would be impossible to guarantee that a good sect could win against them. And the skills of Mount Hua's divine dragon made the other 5 swords seem like children. You are saying Hyo-gong was defeated just by a difference in skills? Yes. Hyo-sanya bowed his head as if he truly felt sorry. Adds by pub future. Even if we compete again, the odds of Hyo-gong winning aren't high. Even when the spar was over, Chang Myung didn't gasp for air. Venerable Hyo-do closed his eyes at this. Hyo-sanya tried to hold his breath so as not to disturb his ray of thoughts. And after being lost in thought for quite some time, Venerable Hyo-do opened his eyes. The sharpness he held, which was visible until a second ago, had vanished. But it felt like something heavier took its place. They were stronger. Yes. Hyo-sanya nodded slowly. No matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't think of anything else to say. Reasons. If he had to give reasons, he could bring up 10 more. If he had excuses to say, he would say them too. But he knew well that they couldn't be the real reasons or real excuses. If one blamed themselves and confessed that it was their mistake, it might look like a responsible thing. But this was an answer that would push the position of Wudang into a further mess, and that wasn't something Venerable Hyo-do wanted. But he had to be honest. Hyo-sanya. Yes, sect leader. Think about this. Elder Hyo-do spoke in a low voice. Were our preparations insufficient? That isn't true, sect leader. Actually, their preparation felt excessive. The individuals they were up against were second and third class disciples of Mount Hua. Since the first class disciples and an elder of Wudang were involved, it seemed a bit overkill. Even when it was suggested that they had lost their dignity there, they couldn't add anything more. Then, was our timing that bad? It wasn't that either. So, that means there was no problem with the timing or our preparation. Then all that is left is luck. Venerable Hyo-do gently interrupted Hyo-sanya's words. Did luck from the heaven side with Mount Hua? It wasn't that either. Venerable Hyo-do looked at Hyo-sanya in silence. Unable to withstand the intensity of those eyes, Hyo-sanya slightly bit his lip and opened his mouth. If we face another with equal strength as ours, we will fight 10 times to win 5 and lose 5 times. It might be possible to get a win, but a true win is difficult to hope for. Then, Elder Hyo-do spoke softly. It was I who was wrong. Sect leader. You are saying that it was quite natural that we lost because we sent a single general to the battlefield when going against an army that couldn't be defeated. This time, Hyo-sanya shut his eyes, not wanting to see Venerable Hyo-do mocking himself. If the preparation, timing, and luck were flawless, there couldn't be just one outcome. Not understanding the enemy correctly and underestimating them. Right. That was it. But Hyo-sanya. Adds by pub future. Yes. With a dejected expression, Venerable Hyo-do said. Does it seem like it makes sense? Hyo-sanya couldn't answer. Actually, no one other than him would have been able to answer the question right away. If what is said is true, then Mount Hua raised their second-class disciples to rival our first-class disciples in a short duration. Sect leader. It meant that a sect, which was on the verge of collapse, is doing something that no Taoist in Wudang could do, and no one in Mount Hua could do before. Venerable Hyo-do's voice turned low. This makes no sense. Tap. 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 His fingers began to tap the desk once again. unlike before, it sounded a bit unstable, not aligning. Hyo Sanya, who could guess the thoughts of the sect leader, let out a rough breath. Mount Hua, Mount Hua. That faint grumbling and gritting of teeth could be felt. In the meantime, the sound of tapping the desk didn't die down, and it only continued to disturb the mind of Hyo Sanya. The breathing turned difficult, and the heart pounded. Crack. Eventually, the finger that had been tapping for too long dug into the desk. The thick log, which was pierced through at once, split the desk in half, making it fall down awkwardly. Sect leader. The teapot had rolled down and spilled all over the floor. But since it was difficult to do anything, Hyo Sanya could only watch all this happen. Venerable Hyo-do was experiencing complex emotions. Hyo Sanya unconsciously shrugged his shoulders at the force that wasn't letting him breathe. Such a shame. But compared to all this, the voice of Hyo-do felt calm. Not only did the first-class disciples go, but an elder accompanied them, yet neither could handle the second-class and third-class disciples. Even an elder was taken down by a third-class disciple. I don't even need to take a look to know just how much amusement the rest of Kango would make of this. Hyo Sanya could only bow his head at this. Even though it wasn't his fault, he couldn't look the man in the eye. There was no way he didn't know just how much their name had shattered due to this incident. The word will spread through the world that it will not be long before Mount Hua takes over the title of being the best sword sect in the world from Wudang. I have nothing to respond to that, sect leader. Do you even know why I am in such pain? I do not. Hyo-do could just turn his head and look out the window. The sky outside was so clean, without a single cloud, and yet such things didn't please him now. Because I thought that maybe it wasn't just all words. Sect leader. This is all beyond common sense. The complex emotions in the eyes vanished, and Hyo-do regained his calmness. If this was a mistake, he would have gotten angry for sure. If it happened because of Hyo Sanya, the man would have been punished. But this wasn't a mistake of anyone. Regardless of what was right or wrong, Venerable Hyo-do and Hyo Sanya did their best for Wudang, and yet, they were trampled by Mount Hua. Ads by Pub Future. I have always kept Mount Hua in check, even when everyone said I was being too much. There aren't many people in the world who are as wary of Mount Hua as me. And yet, even I couldn't have a clear idea about Mount Hua. Sect leader, this isn't your fault. All that doesn't matter now. A calm voice. In order to handle the enemy properly, one has to acknowledge them. I will admit it. The potential of Mount Hua has exceeded both my prediction and my assessment. I thought the dagger they were aiming for was still far, but our throat has been cut, and blood is flowing. Hyo Sanya could only tremble as he listened to the soft words. Somehow, an eerie feeling seemed to grab his neck. I looked down on Mount Hua. After closing his eyes for a moment and calming his mind, Venerable Hyo-do slowly opened his mouth. The shock to the disciples will not be small, so focus your efforts to calm him down. Yes. Venerable Hyo-do shook his head as he thought of something to say. Sometimes defeat can be good medicine. The loss was too great here to be comforted. Hyo-gong. Ah. Did he regain consciousness? Yes. Just before arriving. What did he say? Hyo Sanya clenched his teeth tightly before answering. He locked himself in his residence and is constantly saying incomprehensible things about being wrong from the start. Hyo-do looked up at the ceiling in silence. Then, as if he had gathered his thoughts, he nodded with a calmer look. I get it. You, too, go and rest. Please punish me for this, sect leader. You. Hyo-do smiled. Yes, sect leader. If you need to be punished now, how much more should I be punished? Just go out and have a look. Yes. I will tell you separately how to resolve this matter. Pay attention to ensuring that injured disciples can head back to their daily lives safely. I will make sure to keep that in mind. Hyo Sanya got up and walked out. Venerable Hyo-do, now alone, looked at the room which was all cold and a broken table. The miserable situation was on his mind, as well as the situation Wudang currently found itself in. He slowly got up from his place, walked with long strides, and opened the door. Ha! A peaceful scenery beloved by the elderly. But Hyo-do knew. This scene reflected the sweat and effort of their ancestors. Just how much effort has Wudang had to exert to gain the status of being the best in the world? However, now that he was here, that status was being shaken. Was it wrong from the start? Well, what on earth went wrong here? Mount Hua. Venerable Hyo-do's face showed deep agony as he spoke a name he couldn't understand, but a novelman had had.